Welcome to Comic Book Theater with your hosts, JR and the War Dog.
What's up? This is the War Dog, and this is the second podcast I'm doing with my boy JR. And today we're going to talk about Donnie Cates and some comics gates. So stick around and stay awesome!
Hey man, you've been keeping up to date with what's going on over at Bleeding Cool News and the Donnie Cates Comic Gate situation?
You know, John, I looked at the article, I read over it really quick. It kind of aggravated me a little bit. But can you give me some details, like a synopsis on it?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is my standard disclaimer whenever I'm talking about something like this. There are jerks on both sides of the comic gate goes. I think we would all agree to that. But the bottom line on it is basically Twitter trolls and somebody claiming to be with Comic Gate was trying to claim Donnie Cates as an ally in this whole Comic Gate situation that's been going on. And they just kind of did it out of the blue, and they were expecting Donnie Cates to stick his neck out for them. And Donnie pretty much just came out and said, no guys, I'm not with you here. This is, you guys fight your fight. I'm going to be over. Originally he was just trying to be Donnie Cates, do Donnie Cates stuff, be Donnie Cates. Whenever they came over and tried to put words in his mouth, essentially, that's when he came back and decided, hey, I'm not going to be with you guys on this. I don't agree with what you're doing. And I feel like he backlashed at them. And then of course, they went into the mode that they went into, which was attacking him. Before this, they were saying what a great writer he was and stuff. Basically, that's the way I read it. I don't know. How would you react if you were Donnie?
Oh, I thought he reacted very cordially. I appreciated the way that he reacted, and I don't agree with those people at all. I mean, I'm kind of a middle of the road person. And so,
right.
I can see some of their points, and I can see some of the points on the other side of it, too. I like the way that Donnie Cates is writing. None of his stuff is political. He's writing great stories, and he's probably doing the best job for the comic industry that anybody else is doing. I mean, there's a lot of great writers, don't get me wrong. But, I love Donnie Cates' stuff, and he's bringing a lot more people to an industry that I love. So
right.
It kind of disappoints me that people would even bash this guy. If you don't like his stuff, don't read it, but don't bash him when everything that he writes is hot.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and my point with some of it as well is a lot of what's going on with it is just it's really them lashing out, because essentially with Comic Gate, a difference politically happens, and then people who should know better than to do what they're doing start attacking people that have difference politically with, and instead of the opposite side that was attacked going on the offensive, they just decide, hey, you know what, we're going to essentially do a bunch of burner accounts, and we're going to attack through burner accounts. That's the way that I have seen that play out quite a bit. Of you'll have people who have that little blue check mark by them on Twitter. That means that they're verified and they're somebody important, and then so they'll say something smart alecky or what have you, and they're really they're screaming into the abyss is what they're doing, because the people that are attacking them back, they don't have a profile. They're only following 2 or 3 people. They're only retweeting certain people, and it's essentially a burner account. If Twitter shuts them down, they're just going to open up a new one. They are literally the most basic of trolls, and they're getting under people's skin. And look, like I said before, they're jerks on both sides of this. But just like that, if I personally were Donnie, and I'm talking about him like I know him. I don't know him from Adam. He couldn't pick me out of a lineup. I've said hi to him through Facebook once or twice, and he's been cordial to me, but in the grand scheme of things, he doesn't know who I am. Anyway, if I was him, I wouldn't stick my neck out for those guys either. And if they tried, like you say, if they were trying to put words in my mouth, there's no way, man. I'd be livid. And of course I would backlash back at those guys, even if, and that's the thing too, is I think they did themselves a disservice by putting words in his mouth, because, you know, it just makes sense that they're not really looking for an ally once he's said he's not 100% on board. It's one of those, either you're all the way with us or you're against us. And that's no way to go through life.
Yeah, that is a terrible way for sure. You know, I mean, there's points on both sides. I mean, you know, there's the Comicsgate people, they're a little bit far right, I guess you could probably say. And I understand the fact of we don't want characters changed that we've fallen in love with. And then there's the other side that says that we need more diversity and things like that. And the biggest problem is people can't see eye to eye on that. There's no middle. It's either one thing or the other. I mean, that's my opinion. You know, I can see both sides. I mean, our country is more diverse. So yeah, we need more characters. We need more diversity. I can see from the other side, like if they were when they changed the Hulk, I wasn't really a big fan of Totally Awesome Hulk. But you know, it had nothing to do with it being Amadeus Cho. I just didn't like I didn't like how they portrayed the character. He's a big green. He's green, basically. So I mean, he's not any specific race of the human race at this point. You know, I think people just have to start learning how to find some middle grounds. And in this case, they were trying to pull Donnie out of the middle ground, and Donnie held his ground, which I appreciate.
Right. Well, and I will tell you, this is just one of those things, an observation that I have on the situation, as well as I always find it to be a bad idea to challenge a professional writer to a battle of words. That's a bad idea. An internet troll versus somebody who writes for a living, you really don't stand a chance at that point. It literally is. Man, I can't think of a word. Maybe me or you challenging somebody like Brock Lesnar to an MMA fight. I think that would be the equivalent to what these guys were doing. Because, like you say, don't put words in the mouth of a writer, because he's going to slice and dice you. There's no way around that.
Yeah, I agree. And you're not going to win many supporters when you're ripping one of the best guys in comics today. I mean, like, you know, I read that and all I did was shake my head. Like, what is wrong with these people?
Yeah. It doesn't serve a purpose to alienate. Well, and you know, like you said before, we do have an issue with divisiveness in our country currently. And the really, really bad thing about it is if people sit down and listen to each other, chances are really, really high that you think you disagree with somebody, but in the grand scheme of things, you actually agree with what you want to have. You just disagree on how to get there. And to me, that's one of those things too, where just like this, that the guys from Comic Gate are against diversity in comic books, really. I believe what they're against is the forced or contrived diversity. Diversity that is forced on them. And I use this as an example, okay? Back once upon a time, they were doing a little bit of diversity over at Marvel whenever they had Rhodey take over for Tony Stark in the Iron Man armor. If you followed the Marvel Secret Wars, that was Rhodey as Iron Man, and it was kind of a plot point, a minor plot point, but still a plot point in Marvel Secret Wars. And he started out as a stand-in for Iron Man, and then he gets his own title under War Machine, and people loved it. But it wasn't forced. They gave him a reason to stand in for Iron Man. They built his character. They took their time with it, and War Machine is still around to this day. To me, that's the proper way to do diversity. To just lazily say one time, it looks like Jane Foster is going to be the new Thor. Here we go. Man, give it a little bit of backstory, and I'm not going to lie, I'm not a huge Thor fan myself, so that's probably a bad example, at least because I don't have much to go on off of it other than all of a sudden she's Thor. You know, people enjoyed it as a what-if story, but I don't think that everybody was really super-duper gung-ho about it for it becoming a part of continuity.
Yeah, I see that issue. I think in a lot. I think the publishers in the comic companies are somewhat to blame for this issue, and it turns out to be a battle of the fans. And the comic book companies just kind of sit back and say, you know, just take what we're giving you and accept it. You know,
right.
You know, but I mean, it can be done right. I mean, if you look at like Nick Fury. And picking out Samuel L. Jackson, one of the greatest actors of all time, right? And making him Nick Fury, that was acceptable to me. I could live with that.
Right. Now, and with that was them justifying it. I will tell you though, whenever originally in the Ultimates universe, Nick Fury was I'm trying to think of a better word than what I have rolling around in my head, but whenever they changed his race in the Ultimates universe, it was kind of a big deal. People made a big deal out of it, truthfully, how many people do you know that live and die by Nick Fury comic books? There aren't many of them. There really just aren't many of them. So he's kind of one of those C or D list characters that Marvel movies have elevated, and it has become more acceptable, but they kind of held true to that now. I'm okay with it as well because they got the casting right.
Oh yeah.
I think a lot of things can be forgiven if in the end the execution is right, and if they really you can see that they put effort into it. It wasn't just something that was thrown in there and we have to do it just because. Because again, doing that to him in the Ultimates universe was a big deal at the time, and they kind of just stuck to it.
You know what I don't understand is, okay, so you have Superman, right? And he's a white guy. And can't you just create a Superman that's, I mean, they created the Asian Superman, right? So can't there be some kind of a bubble floating around in space, and all of a sudden it bounces off of the sun, lands on the earth, and you know, a black dude comes out and he's Superman?
You know, honestly, on Earth 2, Superman was a black man in the DC Rebirth. And you know the funny or not, I'm sorry, not Rebirth. I said Rebirth, New 52.
Okay.
But that was Earth 2, and then they did completely. They really did Earth 2 as more of a vehicle to give Power Girl a way to come into the main DC continuity in the New 52 and kind of change up her backstory. And those kind of things. It is interesting, though, that you're right. There are a lot of things that they can change up that people would not necessarily be that against, especially in today's day and age. And I will freely admit, you know this is the gospel truth. I am a fan of Power Girl. That she's one of the ones that's in my primary collection. And I have said this for a couple of months now. If they would find a way to bring her back and write her more as a main character, I would not mind if they wrote her as a black woman instead of a blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman. It wouldn't hurt my feelings at all. I would give it a chance, as long as they're not just doing it for shock value, as long as they're not just doing it to fulfill some type of contrived need for diversity, for further diversity. If they do it and they say, hey guys, we're doing this, we're taking the character in a completely different direction, let's see, we actually write some quality story here. At that point, I'm going to give it a chance. But if it works, great. If it doesn't work, you know, then, or if they do it lazily, that's when I think people really, really have the issue. And I think that's where the guys have it right. It feels like a lot of the diversity is just there for the sake of diversity, not for giving a quality story.
Yeah, and like I said, I think it's like it's the publisher and the comic company's fault more so. Like the fans get at each other, but really, you know, I don't care what the character looks like. You know, like when Black Panther showed up in Captain America: Civil War, I was stoked. Doesn't matter what he looks like. That was one of the most exciting parts of that movie was Black Panther jumping off cars. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely, 100%, man, 100%. And I mean, really, I'll tell you, just in those other mediums other than comic books, if you take movies or TV shows, because I'm a guy that really is a fan of all sorts of different stories and different looks at original characters, something like Elseworld or a What If comic book from DC and Marvel respectively, those are books that I enjoy, and I look at the TV shows and the movies more like a what if, because there's no way a movie can tell you a 15-issue arc in 90 minutes.
Oh yeah,
it's impossible. And nor can a full season. It might be 14 episodes, but those 14 episodes at 30 minutes apiece, if you're lucky, of actual showtime, not including commercials and all that, there's no way that those can tell a full story arc the way they would in comics either. So I really think that most fans are better off looking at those as more of a what if or an Elseworld alternate reality type storyline. I really think people would enjoy those stories better. In fact, even the ones that we view as being a little subpar.
Yeah. So, we live in the age of social media. Do you
Right.
think? So I was thinking to myself today. Do you think that if social media existed when Stan Lee was first writing this stuff, that we would be hearing this same kind of crap? Forgive my wording, but I mean,
100%.
I'm curious. Just
Well, you got to think that, yeah, I believe that we would, and my evidence for that, you're talking about Stan Lee. I'm gonna hop on a soapbox that I've been humping around for a while here. I bring up this example for something like that. You look back to the beginning of the prequels for Star Wars, okay? Everybody was just jacked and super excited to get new Star Wars material at first. Now, mind you, Facebook is not a thing yet. I'm not sure even MySpace was necessarily a thing yet. But the internet was a thing, and chat rooms were a thing. You get those stories done, and you start out in episode 1, and Jar Jar Binks shows up. Okay?
the greatest character of all time.
Hey, look, I'll tell you right now, I personally believe, and for anybody who's interested, it takes about 9 minutes of your life. Go on YouTube and search for Darth Jar Jar.
I believe that.
Dude, there are fan theories, and there are, how can I say this? They're fairly substantial as far as taking in continuity clips and showing them to show that there's a possibility, at the very least, that Count Dooku was never originally supposed to be in that trilogy. That they shoehorned in Dooku because of the fan backlash over Jar Jar. So anyway, I digress slightly, but I really believe that we would have missed out on, if social media existed then like it does today, we would have missed out on things like Yoda. We would have missed out on things. I tend to believe that things like the Incredible Hulk likely would not have been. I mean, you got to understand too, that was pretty cutting edge at the time for the Incredible Hulk or for Spider-Man to show up. Amazing Fantasies was an adult book. And for them to write about a teenage kid getting spider powers, dude, that's definitely a lot. It's very different from what they were doing in Amazing Fantasies 14.
Huh. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I never really, when you think about the name Amazing Fantasies, I guess I never really thought about it, but yeah, I mean, just to have a Spider Kid in Amazing Fantasies 15 is kind of risky.
It was a huge risk. It was a huge risk. Well, and Fantastic Four was a risk. You know, what's to say you don't get some little kid that writes in on his Twitter back after Fantastic Four is released and says something to the effect of that Ben Grimm thing scares me. and then 1,000 other little kids say the same thing, and they get a hashtag trending on 3.
Yeah,
or
they try to
off the tongue nearly as well.
Or they try to light themselves on fire so that they could be like Johnny Blaze. That might be a...
Yes. Hashtag Blaze Challenge.
Yeah.
That would be our luck, really. Then I mean, it's not bad enough that they had to endure the Comics Code Authority and stuff like that already, or the seduction of the innocent. That what a farce that was. But that's for a different show. Well, I'm sure we'll get to that eventually. The history of comics, we might do a segment on that at some point.
Yeah. I guess to get back to Donnie Cates, I mean, to me, Donnie Cates is probably one of the best writers, one of the top 10 writers, I would say, because there's a lot of good writers. I don't want to take anything away from anybody, but he is probably one of the most popular writers right now. When you see a book by Donnie Cates, there's like a 95% chance that you're getting a really good story and a really popular book.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. And honestly, I'm with you that I think top 10 may a little too conservative there. I don't think I could probably name 5 writers that are consistently putting out better stories than Donnie Cates. I don't think I could name 5. So, and again, that's not taking away from the other writers. That's simply saying that, like you're saying, consistently he just takes care of business and puts out these great stories.
If you're a comic book fan, I mean, does it make any sense to rip this guy? It's such a stupid thing in my opinion.
Well, and we both follow a couple of different writers. We both follow different artists. I find that whenever you're going out of somebody's life miserable, when you, generally speaking, enjoy what they do, it doesn't have the desired effect. And not only that, I really truly believe that this did not have the desired effect that the guys from ComicGate wanted it to either. And look, we're using the guys from ComicGate as a general overlapping umbrella that's encompassing a lot of people. You and I both know this could have been 2 or 3 dudes with burner accounts through Twitter, and that could be really all it is. That's the other thing that, like I say, the tweets that I saw from the story, there were no actual profile pictures with those tweets. They were the generic figure from Twitter, and that was it, which is part of what leads me to believe that either A, these people are not who they say they are, or they're just simply burner accounts that are trying to influence, or they're trying to appear as though they have more influence than what they really should have over something,
Yeah, I mean, I really hope that that had no effect on Donnie Cates whatsoever. One of the things that I like the most about Donnie Cates, and I don't want to sound like I'm in love with him, but yeah, I kind of am from a comic perspective. But one of the things that I like is he just tells comic book stories. There's not politics in his stories. I don't know what his political viewpoints are. I read his stories, and he creates interesting characters, and he tells interesting stories. And after I read the stories, I'm not like feeling manipulated or anything like that.
Right. Yes, you're not feeling manipulated. You don't feel guilty for liking it. It does not feel as though his writing had an agenda other than to entertain us.
Exactly.
I think that that's sorely missing from a lot of entertainment mediums myself. I know that's partially. I really also think that that's partially why the Comic Gates guys attempted to try and put words in his mouth and say that he supported him, because and see, that's the other thing that really irks me too, was initially they're saying, hey, he's on our side, everybody love and support him, and then when he says, whoa guys, that's not me, essentially saying don't put words in my mouth, that's when they completely flipped the script. His writing did not change from when they were trying to get him to be a supporter of them. And that's where the other thing too is, those tweets feel disingenuous because, okay, and look, people are allowed to change their mind. They're allowed to support whoever they want to support. But whenever you're at first saying what a great writer he is and how great it is that he's on your side, when you find out he is not, at some point in there, you flip over. You're really the one that looks worse than the guy who's like, hey, I didn't change. My writing's still the same. I'm just letting you know I don't really necessarily agree with your stance. And a lot of people, a lot of entertainers, I don't agree with their stance on certain things, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to enjoy the work that they do.
Oh, yeah.
I'm only hurting myself.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, totally. Trying to think, there was some... I'm at a loss for words at this moment. I'm trying to think of something that I was thinking about earlier. You have anything more on this topic?
No, man. I think that this topic is. I think we've went over this fairly well. We can transition away though, man. That's totally cool with me. What else did you have in mind as far as like what's going on in the very near future for comics? You got any hot comics you got your eyes on or anything like that?
Well, yeah, I do. Actually, so this week in Old Lady Harley number 3, there was the first appearance of the Bane twins. Now, it's probably not anything too exciting, but I'm a first appearance guy, and I know a lot of people like first appearances. Right. So if you're into the first appearances, check out Old Lady Harley 3, and you'll find the first appearance of the Bane twins. I was looking at some of the comics that are coming out next week, and some of the hot ones that I saw, or at least based off of the covers, one of them is Batman 62 cover B is a Frank Miller cover. It looks really cool. Typical Frank Miller art style. But yeah, I'm a fan of Frank Miller, so I was excited to see that one. There's a Green Arrow number 48, and that's a Neil Adams black and white cover. That one's already sold out at Midtown, and that's a really nice cover. I don't know too much about the Green Arrow story. I watched the show, but I'm not too much into the comics. You and I had talked earlier about Harley Quinn number 57 by Julian Totino Tedesco. That is just a really beautiful cover. I don't know too much about that artist, but I'm loving that cover. I'm not even a Harley Quinn fan, but I might pick that one up just for the cover. Derek,
I think that's a good bet.
Yeah, that's a really nice looking cover. Derek Chew has been killing it lately on his covers. He did a Young Justice number 1, and I think Eclipse is on the cover of that one, and that's got some really beautiful colors and looks really nice. Let's see, Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man number 1 comes out next week, and there's there's like 5 covers in that series that look amazing, including one by the Collector's Corner's own Art Germ, which I think that's his first Spider-Man cover, and that is a beauty. But not to take anything away from the other cover artists for the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, there's like 5 really beautiful covers.
Right. Yeah, I'm looking at a couple of them now. But I will say the Art Germ stands out. You can definitely tell, and man alive, he knocks it out of the park there. That's probably one I'm going to have to call and make sure that my LCS has a one stuck back for me.
Yeah, I called up mine this morning and I made sure that they held one for me. But I'm an Art Germ fan. He's a cool guy. He participates on the Collector's Corner, so he's good with his fans, and so I got to support a guy like that. There's 2 other that I'll mention. Web of Venom Unleashed #1. It's a Ryan Stegman story, but those look like they're pretty cool. And this is, well, last year was the year of Venom, so we'll see what this year has to bring with Venom. But the first cover with the dog looks really cool. And then there's a Danger Zone comic, and I'm not a big Danger Zone collector, but there's a comic called Null Fairies #1, and all 3 copies are sold out. So, I mean, I don't know what the Zombie Tramp #1 or the other Danger Zone comics sell for, but if you find a Null Fairies #1, you might want to pick up a copy just possibly as an investment piece.
Right. That is some good pointers there for us to consider for like you say, maybe a spec buyer and investment. I'm with you for sure on the Web of Venom Unleashed #1. Either one of those variants actually looks amazing. I'm trying to think here. I don't know that there's any that I would necessarily add to that. Other than maybe the X-23 cover, that one looks pretty solid as well. But other than that, man, yeah, you got them all covered real well there.
Yeah, the X-23, we were talking about Ashley Witter last week, and she did cover A for that one. She does some beautiful work. And the funny thing is, I was looking at that X-23 cover, and X-23 almost kind of looks like Ashley Witter. So I don't know if she's trying to make herself into X-23. That's just a little comedy.
Who knows? Who knows, man? Okay, this is going to be one of those that's going to show my age a little bit more than White Beard does. Whoever X-23 is fighting there kind of reminds me of Rom Space Knight.
Yeah, I can see that.
The original one.
Yeah, Rom, or like an old school Ultron type.
Yes. Now, so we're talking about these. Did you happen to pick up this week any of the Conan #1s, his return to Marvel? Did you pick any of those up?
Yeah, I picked up Conan. I picked up 1A. My shop doesn't always get a ton of variants, but I'm excited. I've never really read Conan. I just remember Conan from the Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, and so I'm looking forward to cracking into that and just seeing what that story's all about.
Right on. Yeah, I never really read much. I've had a few books here and there of his, but never read much as far as that goes either. I have considered checking it out with his return to Marvel just to see what I was missing. And if memory serves, didn't they? I think they've done at least one or two True Believers that people can pick up out there to reprint some of the original Marvel stuff.
Yeah, I think they brought back. I think there was maybe like 5 to 10 of those True Believers with the old Conan stories. I don't do the True Believers too often, but one of my friends does. There's a lot of big True Believers fans out there.
This is just part of one, for lack of a better way of saying it, one of my philosophies for collecting. At $1 a piece, it's hard to pass that up, because you're going to get $1's worth of enjoyment out of it just reading it. And in some very, very rare cases, especially like when they reprinted Amazing Spider-Man number 300, you can buy those at $1, and then later on you find out that it's going to a second printing because it's sold out completely, and then you check eBay and dollar True Believer books are selling for $5 a piece. You're not going to be able to retire on those if you're a speculator, but if you're a reader, then the True Believers are really a good way for people to be able to get in and see. You never know. You absolutely never know until you've read the story whether you're going to like it or not.
No, it's definitely for $1. I mean, you really can't beat that. If you're going on a plane, I wish more airports had comic books, because the True Believers would be like the perfect airport comics to take onto a plane with you and just kick back and read.
Right. And then the truth of the matter there too is worst case scenario, if you've read them a couple of times, if they get a little dinged up because you didn't put them in a bag or board, or you're wanting to get a younger reader into comic books, like I say, they make all the sense in the world for those reasons, but not necessarily for, like I say, on the very rarest of occasion, maybe for an investment, but not something that I would say somebody could retire off of.
Yeah. All right, well, I think we covered this pretty well. You got any final thoughts on this second podcast?
Well, just kind of real quick, I'm going to leave you with this. You know that I'm a hunter of comic books all over the place. My job allows for me to travel pretty extensively, at least in the region that I live in, and it was actually it was a mixed day in hunting today. And having said that, I want to always caution people, if you are looking at older books, make sure that you take them out of the bag and board and that you thumb through the books, because I almost threw away $5 today, and I'm glad I didn't, because I counted the pages as opposed to just looking at the cover and saying $5 for that. So, word to the wise there. Word to the wise for folks who might be out hunting. Make sure and check your comic books. Make sure you're getting a complete book, not just a book that looks okay.
That's a great point. I could tell some horror stories about that, but since we're running out of time here, we should probably wrap this one up. John, it was great talking to you again.
Good talking to you, War Dog. I will catch you down the road, man.
All right, brother.